Hello, Nancy Ruby here with the Yoga Motion Academy, and today I am very excited about introducing you to what I term the full spectrum of yoga. There's still a lot of misconceptions out there, especially in the West, about what is yoga. Many people think that it's about a pose, but really, yoga is about the person, and it's about the evolution of a person and how we live in the world and in this life. So I'm hoping to give you a quick and clear overview of the big picture of yoga as defined by what we call classical yoga, and it's the 8 limbs. So let's start with something that's very familiar, and I hope you can see this. Is right in the center here is really what we're most familiar with here in the West, and this is called Hatha yoga. So Hatha, those two words together, ha and ta, represent sun and moon. And so Hatha, sun and moon, really translates to the yoga of bringing opposition into balance. So the energy of the sun is very bright and expansive and heated and focused and energetic, and then the energy of the moon is more diffused and cool and calming and quiet. So what we want to do in our practice of classical Hatha yoga is to bring this balance of sun and moon, or effort and ease, action and stillness. Okay? And Hatha yoga is comprised of what a lot of you know about is yoga asana. So asana means basically comfortable seat is the true translation. And it's the postures of yoga. So we call yoga postures asana. And it's truly a practice of yoga when we have that balance of both effort and ease in every form of our pose. It's also just standing here right now, being in effort and ease. So I'm grounded and steady with my feet on the earth, and I'm relaxed in my shoulders and my neck and letting things flow as I speak to you. So asana can be found in both our formal practice on the mat and in our daily life, because it's the practice on the mat that informs how we move throughout our day. So we have asana, moving our body in different ways so that it's comfortable. We want to take care of this physical form so it's not distracting to us, and we can just go about our way feeling energized and relaxed simultaneously. The second limb that's within the Hatha yoga practice is called Pranayama. And prana is our life force, and yama is to extend. So pranayama is to expand or extend our life force. And we do that through specific breathing practices. And sometimes just bringing attention to our breath is all that we need in order for our breath to become slower and deeper and more easeful. So why don't you take a deep breath with me now? And isn't that calming? It calms me down too, because I'm so excited to share this information with you that I tend to go a little bit quick. So we have moving our body in comfortable ways with the balance of effort and ease. And then we want to move our breath in a way that is slow and deep and even. Now sometimes we'll move that breath quicker in order to bring our energy up. Sometimes we'll slow it way down to bring our energy down. There's all different patterns in pranayama. There's a whole section of practice within this area known as what's called the fifth limb of yoga. The fourth limb of yoga. So I mentioned that there's 8 limbs, and asana is the third limb, pranayama is the fourth limb, and then we have the fifth limb, which is called Prata Hara. So Prata Hara means withdrawing of the senses, or sense withdrawal, which means that we're going to take our senses of feeling, hearing, seeing, tasting, and smelling, okay, all of our sensory organs, and we're going to start to bring them in. We're going to harness them, because we can be very distracted by our senses. We can be very driven by our senses. And so part of this practice is to pull our senses inward so that we're listening to the sound of our breath. We are feeling what's happening inside our own body. We're focusing our gaze. So we're going to either close our eyes when we practice or just keep our eyes really focused. It's called a drishti. So when we're in an active yoga practice, we keep our gaze in a particular location so we're not looking all over the place, checking other people out, seeing what time it is. You know, if you practice at home, oh, the cat needs feeding or the laundry needs doing. So we focus our attention inward to resolve distraction. We're also going to breathe deeply and evenly. We might notice the scent around the space, but we want to let go of our attachment to it. And then what I like to say is then we can taste the sweetness of the present moment. So here we have what comprises Hatha Yoga, and this is really the most familiar practice of yoga in the West. So Asana, Pranayama, and Prata Hara. So this is our Hatha Yoga that helps us stay healthy and strong and supple and limber in our physical body. It helps us to balance our energy by moving our breath in particular ways, and it helps us to decrease distraction by bringing our senses inward. From here, we actually have the roots of yoga. So even though many of us come to yoga because of Hatha Yoga, we also begin to learn as we get into this practice that the true roots of yoga are really about a yoga lifestyle. And that has everything to do with how we treat ourselves and others in the world. So we have what's called the yamas and the niyamas. There's 5 of each, and it's very similar to every other spiritual philosophy of how we are to live a life of right thought, right action, and right words. So we're really living harmoniously with ourselves and others. So the yamas are really known as abstentions, or yama, to abstain. And it's interesting that we have to have kind of rules for this because it is our human experience, our human behavior has a natural inclination towards some of these conducts, unfortunately. But it is the human life. And so what we do is we pay attention and we notice our relationship with these things. So yoga teaches us to abstain from violence, to abstain from deceit, to abstain from greed, to abstain from misconduct, and to abstain from stealing. Thou shalt not steal. And what we like to also look at is what is the proactive approach to these things. So if we're looking at what we don't want to do, what is the action in its place? So instead of violence, we act with kindness. Instead of deceit, we speak with truthfulness. Instead of greed, we act with generosity. Instead of misconduct, we act with right action. And instead of stealing, we acknowledge our abundance. And so this is part of how we treat others, and it starts with how we treat ourselves. So really when we first step into the practice, and I said many of us start with Hatha Yoga, the physical practice and breath control and drawing the senses inward, we practice kindness by recognizing our own abilities and limitations. And even not just kindness in action, but kindness in thought. What are the messages that we're sending ourselves? How are we having that internal dialogue between our mind and body? And can we be really truthful about what we're capable of? And when we need to actually maybe challenge ourselves a little more, or when do we need to back off? And can we recognize this sense of giving ourselves the time for self-care and inner contemplation. So we're not trying to grasp what we don't have. We can just sit and really recognize what we have in our life. And then we can be more generous to others with our time and our presence and thoughtful words and kindness and truthfulness. And then when we are on the yoga mat in our formal practice, whether it's just sitting and breathing or moving our body or simply being mindful, sitting in silence, we start to really recognize, it becomes very obvious, what is right action? So sometimes when you have a decision to make in your life, we can go into our formal practice of yoga and draw our attention inward and ask ourselves, what is right action in this situation? And oftentimes it becomes obvious just by asking the question and then moving through the practice of being present, slowing down our breath, and feeling into what's most real within ourselves. And then finally, that idea of non-stealing, or recognizing the abundance in our life. So stealing is not just actually taking things, but it could be stealing someone's time, or stealing someone's joy by going to some, the shadow side or something, or so we want to really recognize abundance and celebrate abundance in the world, celebrate other people's abundance and what they have, as well as our own. So I hope that helps you see how we can be in the world. And this is a lot of what we practice within the Yoga Motion Academy. Is we do a lot of teaching on how to come to a formal practice in Hatha Yoga, but always integrating this idea of how are we treating ourselves so we can treat others well. So next we have the niyamas, which is observances. And the observances are really about how we treat ourselves inwardly. And as my teacher Judith Laster always taught, how are you acting when nobody's looking? So this is really about our personal relationship. And the first one is cleanliness, saucha, which is really about keeping our bodies clean. So it's about personal hygiene. And in Ayurveda, there's a lot of different techniques for taking care of not only our basic physical body, showering or bathing each day, but also cleansing our sense organs, our ears, our eyes, our nose, our mouth, our tongue. And so we keep all those fresh and clean so they operate throughout our lives. Also keeping our words clean, speaking with kindness, so you can see how these niyamas would balance out with the yamas. So keeping our language clean, and even keeping our thoughts clean about ourselves and others, like what's going through the mind. So cleanliness can be experienced on all levels. Secondly is contentment. So can we really just be content with how life is unfolding moment to moment? And again, you can see how these yamas help. So being in the act of generosity and also recognizing our abundance has a lot to do with being in that state of contentment. Can we find contentment with whatever is being presented to us day by day? And that allows us to really live in a place of ease. Third is purity, and this purity is really about cleansing what no longer serves us. So like cleanliness, but purity, the Sanskrit word is tapas, so it means to burn away what no longer serves us. And that could be things in our life, it could be relationships that aren't serving us, it could be beliefs that no longer serve us, it could be habits that no longer serve us. And so it's really about cleaning things out, and it's in line with the element of fire, because fire is transformative. And so tapas means to burn. So burn away what does not serve us so we can have something new in right alignment with our deepest intention. Self-study is the fourth niyama, and self-study means to put the time in to really observe not only our behavior but our beliefs, and to also gather information. And I love this because being an educator, I am also a very avid student. I'm always learning, and when I learn, I grow and I evolve. And this is a huge part of what Yoga Motion Academy is all about, is about studying and learning and integrating and understanding, and then turning around and sharing that understanding with others. So self-study gives us very concrete ideas about different perspectives in life, and when we gather that information, we can have true, authentic understanding. And lastly is surrender. Surrender to the divine. So yoga teaches us to not only go inward and take care of all that we are in this human existence, but also to recognize what is outside of ourselves and to open ourselves up to the bigger picture and the movement of spirit in our lives. So what is the divine in your life? And we all explain that differently. We define that differently. But the idea is to simply surrender. I love that word, to surrender to what is happening in the present moment, to surrender to something bigger than yourself. And that has a lot to do with developing trust and faith. So these are truly the roots of what creates the yoga lifestyle. And then we come to our formal practice of hatha yoga on the mat, which is taking care of our physical body through movement and rest, taking care of energy body through the movement of our breath, and really taking care of mind by bringing our senses inward. So here we have the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth limbs of yoga, and there's 8 of them. So the next is going up, and this is really coming to what we call the Buddhi mind. So now that we've taken care of how we are in the world and how we're treating ourselves and others, and we develop this formal practice of taking care of the physical, energetic, and psycho-emotional aspects of ourselves, we can then begin to expand our mind. And it kind of comes back to that surrender to the divine. So the first is called dharana. Okay, that's the 6th limb of yoga. And dharana means focused attention. And we can really focus our attention when these other things are more in line, because these can also become distractions in our life. So we can focus our attention, and this is where the practice of meditation comes in. So we're practicing meditation by drawing our attention to one particular thought frame. It could be an image, a sound, just simply the present moment, what we call mindfulness. But we're training the mind, which can be very easily distracted and has all kinds of thoughts going on. We're training it to focus in. And we're also allowing the mind to move and to step back even further and recognize that we can watch our mind. So that's an interesting aspect, because so many people that are introduced to meditation feel that they can't meditate because they can't stop their mind. And that's really not the point. The idea is to step back from the thoughts and observe them and just let them be, while this higher mind of ourself can stay focused in the moment. And that's really what's called dhyana, our expanded mind. So we're focusing the lower mind, the busy mind, so we can experience our higher mind, or our expanded mind. Some lineages call it big mind. So now we have this diffused awareness, okay, where we're not attached to thought, and we are just being. And it's some place that we actually return from, because as soon as we start to think, oh, I'm meditating, then we lose that diffused awareness. And in practicing this idea of stepping away from all of our doing and step into being, we start to have a better perspective on our place in this life and how we can be in this world. And it leads to what they call samadhi, which is liberation from suffering. And that really is the primary intention of yoga. It is not to stretch your hamstrings. It is to liberate us from suffering by treating ourselves and others well, by taking care of our body and creating balanced energy and clarity of mind, and to allow ourselves to really recognize the interconnectedness to something bigger than ourselves. And that's the spirituality of our lives. And this is defined so differently in each of us, and yet there's a similarity, right? So this is the 8 limbs of yoga in a nutshell, and this is a big part of living a very vibrant and easeful life. I hope that helped you get a bigger picture of all that yoga contains, and I look forward to sharing more with you at another time. Namaste.